Death has two faces, one's own death and the death of those we love. Wisdom looks into the eyes of each face and sees there what it must. What is it to die? It is to return to the elements, to continue as part of the whole, but in a different way. Now we are a living unity. Then we will be changed into something diffuse and organic, part of the nature no less than we are now, and no less than we always were before our present form. Thus the components of our substance exist forever, coeval with the universe, made in the stars, and in an endless dance with other elements, constituted and reconstituted throughout time by nature's law.
Okay, good morning, everyone. And welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is Kevin Smith, and currently I'm serving as Vice President of Finance and member of the Executive Committee here at UUCF. Our minister, Reverend Leonetta Belasi, is out of the pulpit this morning. Today's guest speaker is Hilary Smith, one of our new members who you've just met. I'll introduce Hilary again a little later before her presentation. But I would like to extend a special welcome to any visitors that we might have here today. Please join us after the service downstairs for coffee and conversation. A member of the membership committee will be available to answer any questions that you might have. So at this time, I invite anyone who is here, a first-time visitor, if you're brave enough to stand up and introduce yourselves and tell us how you found us. We'd like to get to know you. Anyone here? Hey.
I apologize for my attire. I came from camping. I didn't quite expect to go to church today. I am from Farmington Hills originally, and I attended Tapestry here in high school, but I never attended any church sessions. So now I live in Kalamazoo. I went to my first UU church there a couple weeks ago, and since I was heading back, and I figured, hey, I'm just made it here just in enough time for church that it would be a good time to finally see what it's like here instead of just going to the youth group.
Terrific, we're glad you made it. Anyone else? Yes, please.
You're brave enough to confess your camping gear. We came from the vegetable garden today. This is actually the first time I've attended a service here, but I joined Reverend Leonetta's World Religions class for a few months, and it was really very interesting. It had a good group of people and a lively exchange, and my yoga sensei is introduced us to the church. She also teaches classes. So little by little, I'm integrating into the community, I guess. But today is the first time to hear the sermon.
Anyone else? Welcome to both. You may not need all this, but just for information, during the service, we do have supervised nursery for babies and toddlers, and RE classes and activities for the children and the youth. If you want more information, Natalie Case is our new RE coordinator. She can help answer any questions that you might have. If you need to leave the service for any reason, there's 2 other locations in the building where you can watch TV and follow the service, and an usher can direct you there. So let's all remember here that we are a welcoming congregation. We welcome all humans, regardless of race, sexual orientation, belief systems, and age, even the small, fidgety children that make noises sometimes. These folks are our future. We welcome them while they're in the meeting house. I only have one announcement here today, unless someone has more. But it's a reminder that on September 24th, we'll be holding another New UU discussion. It's an informational session for folks that are have been attending a while and are interested in making a commitment potentially and becoming members. So we share a lot of information about the bigger UUA organization, our congregation here, and how things work. So it'll be, again, on September 24th, 2 hours immediately following services. There's a notice with more details in the order of service. There's a sign-up sheet downstairs in Adams Hall. Any other announcements that people are walking in? If not, I ask you to refer to your order of service where there is more in the back in terms of upcoming events and information. And then one reminder, if you haven't already, please silence your cell phone as a courtesy to everyone here. Okay. I always have to check the lineup here. So please join me in the litany of gathering that is printed here in your order of service. This is our sacred time and space. Gather in community to renew our spirits, to explore the mystery, and to share our joys and sorrows. With you I find strength. Together we become bound by love and respect. With me you can share your deepest self. Together we learn to understand and to forgive. We share triumphs, and they inspire. We share failures, and we share our human nature. We share joy, and it multiplies. We share sorrow, and it begins to lessen. So please, at this time, come forward to share whatever joys and sorrows of a personal nature you wish to share with us this morning. Please come to the mic if you can, and introduce yourselves and do your sharing. Anyone? Well, I've got one. It's good to come prepared. Actually, I've got a great one. I haven't been here in about a month, but it's on. Those of you who have been around here a while may remember my daughter Alexa, who basically grew up in the church. She and her husband, on August 5th, had their first child, a little girl, Zoe Frances Senegor. Mother and daughter are doing fine. We've been there to visit and help, and it's great being a granddad again for the second time. So I'm going to light a candle for Zoe, and I'll light one more for the unspoken joys and sorrows that folks have here. All right, if you can, please join us in our first hymn. It's number 311, Let It Be a Dance. Please rise as you are able. So please join us, or join me, in reading the words of offering. We give generously to support this church where love, justice, and equality inspire our acts of service and compassion. We dedicate these gifts to all that we stand for within the Unitarian Universalist tradition. All right, I'd like to introduce our speaker today. As I mentioned earlier, it's Hilary Smith. Hilary's a fairly new member here. She's been coming a while, but officially joined us as a member in just February of this year. She's already involved in Sunday Services Committee, and that's probably how she got tabbed for being here, making her presentation today. So I give her credit for being brave enough with just a short tenure here to stand up in front of us and share her thoughts. So I appreciate that, as I'm sure you do. Let me introduce Hilary Smith.
So we're going to start with a short meditation. It is in the death of others that our deepest grief and greatest loss comes. From the viewpoint of our brief and local lives, we do not see the loss as change only or as a returning. Rather, it strikes us with the iron of grief. To live is to have a contract with loss. The past eludes us and carries away what we valued. Some of those we love will surely die before we do, and we will mourn them. For this is what we must have courage. Necessity is hard, so we must accept what is inevitable and unavoidable and endure. But even grief abates, and those we grieve, if they could speak, would tell us that they do not wish us to grieve forever, but would wish us to remember the best of them and return our thoughts to life in the good. And life is the endeavor of the good. We honor them most and cherish the memory of them best by obeying the injunction to live and to seek the good that endures. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? Okay. 10 days after I was born, my grandmother died. Growing up, I would go to the cemetery to visit her every Saturday with my grandpa and my mom. To me, it was a chance to maybe see a crane or some ducks swimming in the cemetery pond, followed by breakfast with chocolate milk because grandpa gave it to me. As I grew older, I took that time to appreciate being able to talk with my grandmother. Before I was born, my parents had moved in with my grandparents to help with the care of my grandmother. Throughout my childhood, we stayed living with my grandfather, and eventually I helped my mom care for him as well as my great aunt and uncle. We kept everyone at home as long as we could, but lifting full-grown adults is challenging, especially when you have your own health problems like my mom did. Eventually, their care was given over to nursing homes and hospitals with visiting hospice nurses. I stayed with my mom through the long hours of my family members' death vigils. I held their hands as they took their last breath. And then I went with my mom to make the funeral arrangements. It was at this point that I realized what I wanted to do with my life. In 2015, when my dad died, my fifth grade teacher who attended the same church as him came to his visitation. She asked what I ended up doing with my life, and I said, I work here at the funeral home. And she looked at me, her eyes real big, and said, oh my goodness, you actually did it. I've never had a fifth grader tell me they wanted to be a funeral director. For most people working in the funeral industry today, you will find very similar stories of it being a calling instead of a family business passed down. The death care industry is going through a lot of change right now, and you have more choices available to you than ever before. What can you do to make sure you have the best experience possible for yourself and for your loved ones at the end of life? It starts with open communication. You need to talk with your loved ones, your medical providers, your support system of friends and spiritual advisors. I meet with so many families who have no clue what mom or dad wanted for their funeral because they never talked about it. The subject of death has become taboo. How did this happen? Death is universal. It's the one thing that is going to happen to all of us. A little more than 150 years ago, the caring for the dying loved one was the sole responsibility of a person's family. The dying person was cared for in the family home and often passed in their own bed. The family would then take care of washing, dressing, and getting their deceased loved one ready for friends and neighbors to visit and pay their respects before the funeral service and burial took place. During the Civil War, embalming became popular since it preserved the body of the individual so it could be transported home for burial. Since then, the use of funeral directors and funeral homes has become the norm for most people. Similarly, the care of our dying loved ones has become institutionalized. Most people now die in a hospital or nursing home instead of their own home. There are a number of reasons for this shift. Advances in medical technology now allow us to live longer than ever before, and sometimes this isn't a good thing. Too often, the elderly are put through medical procedures that are unnecessary because they may extend their life, but at what cost? It is important to make it very clear to your loved ones and your healthcare providers just how much medical intervention you want. The easiest way to do this is to have an advance directive. This form gives you the opportunity to make your decisions regarding your healthcare known and appoint someone to make these decisions for you if you are unable to speak for yourself. Some of the information covered by an advance directive include, do you want to be resuscitated? Do you wish to be kept alive by artificial means? Which types of artificial means? For how long? Do you want comfort care? And do you want to be an organ donor? We are now experiencing a slight shift back toward caring for our dying family members at home. People are realizing that help is available to them. Hospice care has become a crucial part of our medical system. Whether hospice visits your loved one in a nursing home, hospital, or in your own home, or in a hospice care facility, they make a profound difference in the care of your loved one. Ideally, we would all like to die at home in our own bed, and for some, hospice makes this possible. but most people are unable to care for their loved one at home for a number of reasons. It is physically and emotionally draining. Most people don't know how to safely move an immobile person. Our homes are not handicap accessible, and we have other responsibilities such as work and caring for our families in addition to caring for our dying loved ones. You should never feel guilty for not being able to care for your loved one at home. My mom died in ICU. She never received hospice care because she went into cardiac arrest and was resuscitated. Because we had had many conversations about her dying, I knew she did not want any type of life support, and I was able to make the decision to remove her from it. I would have preferred to care for her at home, but she needed more advanced medical care than what could be provided in a home setting. My dad died in a hospice unit. I couldn't care for him at home because I was on crutches with a broken foot. But the hospice unit was the closest thing that I could have asked for to being home. They allowed my dog, who he lovingly referred to as his grandchild, in to visit. He was visited by ministers and musicians, giving him peace and solace with their words and with their music. I could play him his CDs, read to him. I brought in essential oils to help calm him and help his breathing. And my cousin was able to perform Reiki on him for the same purposes of calming. The staff checked on him without being invasive, but were right there if you paged them. They monitored his pain and agitation levels and made him as comfortable as possible with medications. They also took care of me. Allison, my dad's main nurse, would refresh my tea, bring me water, and help me heat up and transport my meals since I was on crutches. My family let her know that beyond the cast on my foot, I had other medical problems, and so she made sure I took naps and reminded me to care for myself. When it came time to plan the funerals of my parents, I had the advantage of already knowing what they wanted, right down to the hymns they wanted played for their services, because we talked about it regularly. It also helped that I had already written down all their funeral arrangements at work. There is a lot of information and decision-making that goes into creating a meaningful funeral. Again, open communication with your loved ones is by far the key to making these arrangements go as smooth as possible and be as meaningful as possible. It may not be a comfortable conversation, but it is one you need to have. It may even bring your family closer together. You do have the option of pre-planning and/or prepaying your funeral. This helps to take some of the stress off of your loved ones, and it can also help save money since most of the items are guaranteed against inflation when you prepay them. But make sure that you do your research before giving your money to anyone. We have all heard the news stories in recent years of funeral homes not properly handling prepaid funeral funds. Where I work, prepaid funeral money never touches our hands. We have you, the consumer, write the check directly to the third-party company that holds the funds. While this isn't every funeral home's practice, the money should always be held by a third party so that it is available to you at your time of need, regardless of if you use that funeral home or not. This protects your investment against the funeral home going out of business, if you move to another state and want to be buried there, or if you just don't like that funeral home anymore. The money will be there for your family to use. Prepaying for your funeral is also a way to do a spend down for Medicaid purposes. By putting the money away for your funeral, it is guaranteed against the nursing home taking it from you. Just recently, the state of Michigan has begun to allow us to designate a death care representative. Most people don't know that power of attorney ends at death, and this has left a number of people battling for control of a loved one's final disposition. With this new law, you are able to appoint a friend or family member to carry out your final wishes. For people like me who have no immediate family, this is a fantastic option to make sure that I get the funeral that I want. Since I have no spouse, children, parents, or siblings, this would leave my 5 aunts and uncles in charge of my funeral. I would most likely end up with a Catholic service that I did not want and a burial instead of a cremation, and that's if they could agree at all. With my death care representative paperwork in order, I was able to appoint my cousin to be the sole decision maker after my death, so that I will have a nice simple funeral and be cremated and spread to the winds. This is as far as I will go into the legal paperwork aspects of death and dying. If you do have questions or want more information, I do have some planning booklets as well as some informational guides from the Michigan Funeral Directors Association with me today, and I'll be down during coffee hour, and feel free to ask me for them. The most meaningful funerals and visitations that I have seen are those that are most personalized. For my mom's, we had bowls of her favorite candy and t-shirts donated by the Scleroderma Foundation that people were free to take and help spread awareness of what had taken her life. For my dad's, I brought in the many pieces of wood carvings he had done throughout the years. I have had a family decorate the entire funeral home for Christmas in the middle of August because the deceased loved Christmas. Families have brought in beautiful handmade quilts to drape over the casket in the backs of our couches, old military uniforms and displays of medals of honor, and even bowling balls and trophies from different sporting events. We occasionally even have classic cars parked out front for everyone to see what the deceased put their love and hard work into. It's these touches that make the greatest impact and allow us to mourn our loss, but remember the person. Bring in those pictures, their crafts, and all the small things that the person loved. Let it be a celebration of their life, whether you choose to have a service at a funeral home, a church, a hall, or even your own home. The more personalized it is, the more meaning it will have for you and for those attending. There are a couple of newer trends in the funeral industry that I would like to touch on, but I am by no means an expert on. These subjects being family-owned versus corporately owned funeral homes, green burial, home funerals, and death doulas. I work for a small family-owned funeral home that has been in existence for almost 100 years. We have less than 15 employees, and we are treated like family. Just down the street from us is a corporate-owned funeral home where I was stationed during a semester of school. The difference between how employees and consumers were treated from my small family-owned firm to the corporate firm were startling to me. I went from my priority being taking care of people to taking care of the bottom line. If shopping local is important to you, if having things made in America is important to you, shop around, ask questions. This is your only chance to plan this funeral. Make it how you want it to be. It never hurts to take the time to shop around ahead of time, as prices can vary greatly within that small area. Green funerals are less of a new trend and more of a returning to simpler times. Embalming is usually skipped, and instead of a fancy wood or metal casket, the deceased is wrapped in a shroud of natural fibers or placed in a wicker casket or simple wooden box. Green cemeteries are popping up across the country, and there are a number of them here in Michigan as well. Within these cemeteries, no embalming is allowed, and again, what the person is buried in must be natural. You also don't have a headstone. They might let you plant a tree. They might let you just put a simple rock that has a number carved in it so you know where your loved one is. Hand in hand with the green burial movement is the home funeral. Again, it is a return to simpler times where your family cares for your bodily remains at home until the time of burial or cremation. There is nothing wrong with this, but it is appropriate for very few families. As with caring for someone who is dying, many people may not be emotionally or physically equipped to deal with what happens to a body after death. In Michigan, it is completely legal for you to do so, but you will need a doctor to sign the death certificate with the cause of death and a funeral home to sign it and obtain a burial transit permit for you. Unfortunately, few will be willing to do this for you out of fear of litigation, but some will help you as long as you sign a waiver that you understand the changes that occur after death may cause emotional distress to some individuals. A death doula is just what it sounds like. A normal doula takes care of a woman during labor and helps her to deliver that baby. A death doula takes care of that person and their family as they are dying and helps the family deliver that person into their afterlife. They can help you with the washing and dressing at home. They can help you obtain that home funeral, and they're they'll be there to support you spiritually throughout the whole process. They work very closely with many hospices. Some of the most important lessons of my life have been learned because of death. I learned the tradition and family loyalty from the care and deaths of my grandparents, great aunt and uncle. My mom was given less than 5 years to live and no children by doctors and went on to live for 25 years and had me. From her, I learned that every day is a gift, but that there is no day but today. My dad couldn't let go of the past and couldn't live in a world without my mom. From his death, I learned to forget regret or that life is yours to miss. There are 525,600 minutes, 525,000 moments so dear. How will you measure your last year on earth? Make sure you do it your way.
Thank you, Hilary. Our closing hymn is number 128, For All That Is Our Life. Please rise and join us as you're able.
What we are never ceases. We are part of the whole and always so. History cannot shed us from it annals any more than nature can annihilate the particles of our being from its scheme. We are forever a part of what is indelible, written in the record of nature and the human story, whatever our part or place.
This concludes our service. Please stay and enjoy the postlude and join us afterwards for coffee and conversation downstairs.